The long-awaited returned galaxy had moved on, its attention shifting from one powerful empire to the next. The humans, once considered insignificant, had all but disappeared from the minds of the galaxy's greatest powers. Earth, with its small fleet of ships and barely a presence on the galactic stage, was a distant memory. The vastness of space held many secrets, but one of the most pressing ones had always been the mysterious disappearance of humanity's greatest exploration vessel, the human exploration ship. For 11 years, the ship had been lost, out of contact, with no sign of what had happened to it. Some believed it was destroyed. Others thought it had simply gone too far into the unknown to ever return. And for the galaxy's elite, the absence of humanity was a relief. There were no more questions, no more messengers from Earth. It was as if the human race had quietly faded into history, but all that was about to change. The first sign that humanity's ship was not lost forever came in the form of a signal, a strange, encrypted transmission from deep within the galactic void. At first, the galaxy's powers dismissed it as a fluke, perhaps a glitch in the system. But as the signal grew stronger, clearer, and more persistent, they realized that it was coming from a familiar source. The human exploration ship had returned. It was the first sign the galaxy had received in over a decade that humanity had not vanished. They had returned, evolved, changed, and ready to face whatever had kept them hidden all this time. As the transmission spread across the galaxy, the people who had once written off Earth as irrelevant were suddenly listening. The message that came through the comms was simple but powerful. Like a bolt of lightning striking through the void. After 11 years, we are back, we've evolved, and we are ready to face what devours galaxies. Those words sent shockwaves through the galaxy. To many, they were just the ravings of a desperate species trying to reclaim their place. But to others, those who had seen the human spirit rise against all odds, it was a clear warning. Something had happened out there, something that had changed the human crew of the ship in ways no one could have imagined. The tone in the message wasn't one of desperation, it was one of absolute certainty. The message was quickly received by the Galactic Union, and within moments, the entire galaxy was buzzing with speculation. What had happened to the human ship? Where had it been all this time? And what did they mean by evolved? These were questions that needed answers. On Earth, the return of the ship was met with a mixture of fear and excitement. The human population had always known that their exploration mission was dangerous, that the galaxy was full of unknowns, but nothing had prepared them for the reality of their return. What would this mean for Earth, for humanity's place in the galaxy? Commander Callan, now the leader of the human fleet, stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at the large holographic display of the message. His heart raced as he thought about what lay ahead. The galaxy had turned its back on Earth long ago, but now that they had returned, humanity had a chance to prove itself. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about showing the galaxy that Earth was more than a forgotten world. It was about taking control of their future. We've waited long enough, Callan muttered under his breath. Now it's time to remind the galaxy what we're capable of. The human ship, once a symbol of peaceful exploration, had transformed into something more. The crew had encountered things no one on Earth could have imagined: vast alien entities, unknown technologies, and secrets buried deep within the galaxy's most ancient corners. But it wasn't just the ship that had evolved, it was the people aboard it. The trials they had faced, the battles they had fought, and the knowledge they had gained had changed them. They were no longer the peaceful explorers they had been. They were now warriors. The ship's exterior had been reforged, its technology upgraded with the advanced systems they had encountered in their travels. But it wasn't just the ship that had evolved. The crew, too, had undergone changes, some of which were more mysterious than others. Earth's people were no longer the fragile race that had once been overlooked. They were stronger, wiser, and determined. As the flagship moved toward the center of the galaxy, Callan looked out at the view, his thoughts running wild. Earth had been forgotten, left to its own devices in a galaxy that moved on without them. But now they had returned, not just to survive, but to lead. The galaxy might think they could ignore humanity, but they were wrong. This time, the humans would show the galaxy what it truly meant to be a part of the stars. As the ship's engines hummed to life, a sense of purpose filled every crew member aboard. The mission ahead wasn't going to be easy, and there would be those who opposed them, but humanity had been through worse. They had fought battles on their home world, struggled against the odds, and still, they had risen. The galaxy had no idea what it was about to face. The human exploration ship was more than just a vessel. It was a testament to humanity's ability to evolve, adapt, and survive. And it was ready to show the galaxy that Earth was no longer a myth. It was a force, one that could no longer be ignored. Secrets of the Void. Human fleet moved cautiously toward the heart of the galaxy, with every ship on high alert. The transmission had been sent, But what did it mean? The crew aboard the flagship were still processing the implications of what they had just returned. To a simple message had turned everything upside down. We are ready to face what devours galaxies. But the truth was far more complicated. There was something about the tone of the message, an unspoken warning. Humanity had been silent for 11 years. What had changed them so drastically? What had they discovered in the void that now made them so certain they could face an entity capable of devouring entire galaxies? Commander Callan, pacing the bridge, felt a growing unease. The ship's return was supposed to be a victory. Humanity had come back stronger, yes. But the galaxy wasn't ready for what they had become, and neither was he. The encounter had left marks on them all, the crew included, and the galaxy's response: fear, skepticism, and confusion was expected. What had they seen out there? What had they encountered? Commander, said Lieutenant Arya, breaking through his thoughts, we're getting reports from the outer systems. The Union and the Krasl are on the move. They're mobilizing forces around key territories. It seems like they've heard our transmission and they don't like it. Callan turned slowly. They'll never like it, he muttered, looking out the window at the dark expanse ahead. But we don't have a choice anymore. We can't stay in the shadows. We've seen what's coming. And we have to make sure they understand that humanity won't back down. The human fleet had been out of contact for over a decade. But the galaxy's most powerful factions had been waiting for them, expecting the humans to return weak, broken, and defeated. Instead, the humans had come back evolved not just in technology but in spirit. Earth's new armada was fast, powerful, and equipped with technologies that left the galaxy's elite questioning everything they thought they knew. The transmission had sent shockwaves through the galactic corridors. Some factions had dismissed it, assuming it was an empty threat from a desperate species. But those with keen intelligence knew better. The humans weren't just returning from the depths of space. They were coming back with something new, something the galaxy had never seen before, and that something was dangerous. As the fleet made its way toward the galactic core, Callan and his senior officers reviewed the data gathered from their time away. They had learned so much, encountered so many new races, technologies, and phenomena. But the most startling discovery had been the entity that was consuming entire star systems, the one that humans were now prepared to face. They've seen it, Callan said quietly, eyes scanning the digital readouts. This entity, this predator, it's out there and it's real. Arya nodded, her face tense. We thought it was a myth, something ancient, buried in the oldest records. But now we know it's out there, consuming everything in its path, and it's heading toward us. The humans didn't just survive, Callan continued, we evolved because of it. Our technology, our ships, everything we've encountered has made us stronger. We know how to fight it now, but can we really stop it? Arya asked, looking at him with concern. We're going to try, Callan replied grimly. We don't have a choice. Asterisk. In the council chambers of the Galactic Union, the conversation had turned heated. Ambassador Lyra stood at the head of the table, looking over the holographic displays of human movements. They had returned far more powerful than anyone had anticipated, and their message had left the galaxy on edge. The humans are evolving faster than we expected, said General Varric, his voice laced with anger. We let them slip away once, and now they return with something we cannot ignore. Lyra's clenched her jaw. I knew the day would come when they'd discover their true potential. We were right to try to keep them suppressed, but now we must act quickly. If the humans truly face the entity they claim to have encountered, then it is no longer just about their survival. It's about whether or not they can hold the galaxy in their hands. Asterisk. Are we really going to let them get that far? Varric's voice boomed, his fists pounding on the table. The humans will have a fleet strong enough to challenge us. We cannot allow that. We must do whatever it takes to stop them. Ambassador Zella of the Vorta spoke up cautiously. I agree with Varric, but there is more at play here. If what the humans encountered is real, if there is indeed a predator capable of devouring entire galaxies, then we cannot simply engage them in battle. We must understand the threat first. The council sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of their decisions bearing down on them for the first time. The Union realized that the galaxy's most powerful species were no longer in control. The humans had returned changed, evolved, and ready to challenge everything. Back on the human flagship, Callan turned to his crew, his mind already focused on the task ahead. He knew what the galaxy's powers were planning. They had already started to gather their forces, preparing to shut humanity down before it could rise any further. But the humans weren't just going to roll over. They were prepared for this war, not just with their ships and weapons, but with the one thing that had always made them unstoppable, their will to survive. We've been given a second chance, Callan said to his officers. We've been through hell, and we've come back stronger. Now, we have to make sure the galaxy knows it. It's not just about stopping a predator anymore, it's about showing the galaxy that humanity isn't afraid of what's out there. We're going to fight back, no matter what. His crew nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening. They had all been part of the mission for so long, and now, with the final battle on the horizon, they knew there was no turning back. They weren't just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for a future where humanity wasn't a forgotten species. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. The human ship had returned, and it was ready for war. Unraveling the mysterious aftermath of the first battle weighed heavily on the human fleet. Though they had scored a decisive victory, the cost had been high. The Krasl forces, though formidable, had been pushed back, but the real challenge lay ahead. The message sent by the human fleet's return was clear. Earth had returned, evolved, and ready to fight for survival. But as Commander Callan stood on the bridge of the flagship, he knew the true test had only just begun. Despite the hard-won success, a deep unease began to settle over Callan. The enemy had retreated, but that wasn't the end. The galaxy's elite powers, stunned by humanity's unexpected strength, were now scrambling to understand what had just happened. They didn't know what humanity had truly become after 11 years in the void of space. The humans weren't the same anymore. Their ships were faster, more agile, their technology more advanced. The humans had learned from their encounters, adapting and evolving in ways the galaxy could not have imagined. But there was something darker, something far deeper that they had discovered. Humanity had come face to face with a force so ancient, so powerful, that it now loomed over them like a shadow. And the time was fast approaching when that shadow would finally catch up to them. We've been given a glimpse of something bigger, Callan murmured to himself, staring at the data coming through on his command console. The images on the screen didn't make sense, yet they were clear. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had stepped into the heart of it, unknowingly challenging something far older and far more dangerous than they had ever realized. The crew aboard the flagship was on high alert, and as the days passed, more strange anomalies began to surface. Entire systems had vanished from the galaxy's star maps. At first, it was dismissed as a miscalculation or a glitch in the galactic system, but the losses were growing. Entire sectors were disappearing without a trace. No ships, no signals, no warning, just silence. "We've confirmed it," Commander Lieutenant Arya said, her voice tense. "The systems near the galactic core are being erased. No debris, no remains, just gone. We've never seen anything like this." Callan's fists clenched, his gaze fixed on the screen. It was happening again. The galaxy-devouring force they had encountered during their deep space exploration was now moving closer, and this time, it was heading toward the heart of the galaxy. The humans had learned this monster's nature in fragments, but every new revelation only confirmed one thing. They weren't prepared for what they had unleashed. They didn't just feed on stars, Callan said grimly, looking at the reports. They devoured entire systems, whole civilizations, wiped clean. And we've been following it this entire time, thinking we could control the situation. It's too late now. We need to stop it before it consumes everything. Arya looked at Callan, her expression a mixture of disbelief and fear. How do we stop something that can erase entire systems without a trace? "We can't stop it with just guns and ships," Callan replied, a dark realization creeping into his voice. "The humans that returned, they were changed because of what we encountered out there. This isn't a normal fight. It's about understanding this force, learning how to face it. We need to evolve even further if we're going to survive." As the human fleet set course for the galactic core, the true extent of the threat became more apparent. The predator, the force that devoured galaxies, was not just a creature, it was a phenomenon. Something so ancient and so powerful that it bent the very laws of the universe to its will. It could not be defeated by conventional means, and the humans knew it. The galaxy's powers were in disarray, and the Union's elite factions were too busy trying to contain the humans to realize the true danger was coming from something far beyond their comprehension. Meanwhile, in the heart of the galaxy, Ambassador Lyris paced nervously within the Galactic Union's war room. The humans' message had been received and analyzed, but the deeper implications were too dangerous to fully acknowledge. They had been too focused on humanity's unexpected rise on their power, their advanced technology, to understand that the humans had stumbled upon something far greater, something that could unmake everything the galaxy had worked so hard to build. "We're running out of time," Lyris said, her voice cold as she addressed her fellow council members. "The Krasl have been pushed back, but that's not the real threat. The real enemy is still out there, consuming everything in its path." General Fark of the Krasl sneered, shaking his head. "The humans were supposed to be our distraction, a tool to keep the Union's power in check. But now they've turned into something else. They're not just a nuisance anymore. They're a force we can't control, and if they don't fall in line, We'll have to destroy them before they become too powerful. Destroy them, Ambassador. Zella of the Vorta questioned, her eyes narrowing. You think that's possible? They've already proved they can withstand us. They are adapting in ways we didn't think were possible. Our forces are nothing compared to theirs now. Lyris exhaled slowly. The galaxy's power is crumbling. The humans have become the wild card. But we are not helpless. We know the truth about the force they are facing, and we must use that knowledge to our advantage. If we act now, we may still have a chance. Back aboard the human flagship, Callan watched as the fleet began its journey toward the galactic core. The stars stretched out before them, endless and cold. Yet, the true threat wasn't in the stars, it was what lurked beyond them, waiting to consume everything. Humanity's mission had always been one of exploration, of discovery. But now, it was something else entirely. It was a fight for survival. The human ship had returned after 11 years, evolved and ready to face a galaxy that had forgotten them. But the real battle was only beginning. The predator they had awakened was coming, and it would take everything humanity had learned and more to survive it. As the fleet made its way deeper into space, Callan knew that whatever lay ahead, they couldn't turn back. Humanity had come too far, and the galaxy would soon understand that they had made a grave mistake in thinking humanity was a myth. The heart of the beast. As the human fleet advanced deeper into the galaxy's core, Commander Callan couldn't help but feel the weight of the universe bearing down on them. The ship's hull trembled slightly as they passed through space anomalies, and the atmosphere aboard the flagship was tense. The crew was on edge, aware that they were venturing into unknown territory that might be their final battlefield. Every member of the fleet had their role to play, but deep down, they all shared a singular thought: the predator was coming and they had no idea how to stop it. But they knew one thing for certain: humanity had never backed down from a challenge, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. Commander, we're approaching the coordinates, Lieutenant Arya said, her voice calm but laced with tension. We'll be within the range of the core in under an hour. The readings from the nearby systems are disturbing. Callan didn't answer immediately. He knew what she meant. The galaxy had been shaken by the predator's movements, but as they closed in, it became clearer that this force wasn't just destroying systems, it was reshaping the fabric of the galaxy itself. Stars were vanishing, entire planets were disappearing into voids, and no one could explain why. What's the status on our weaponry? Callan asked, his gaze fixed on the stars outside the ship's viewports. We've been able to optimize the weapons, but Arya hesitated. We don't have the firepower to match whatever it is that's out there. We're not even sure if we can hit it. The predator moves too fast. It's not a ship, not a force in the traditional sense. It's something else. The tension on the ship was palpable as the fleet continued its steady march into the unknown. Every ship, from the flagship to the smallest scout, was a part of this last stand. The humans had no allies, no reinforcements, and no backup. If they failed, the galaxy would be lost forever. Earth's fate and the fate of countless other worlds hung in the balance. At the heart of the galaxy, the human fleet finally arrived at their destination, a dark, swirling mass of energy surrounded by the remnants of broken stars. Callan's heart sank as he watched the readings flood his console. This wasn't just a physical place, it was a void, a wound in the galaxy where nothing remained but darkness, and the remnants of everything it had consumed. It's here, Arya said softly, her voice filled with awe and fear. This is the heart of the beast. Callan's eyes locked onto the dark, pulsating mass. There was a strange energy radiating from it, something unlike any force they had encountered before. It was as if the very essence of space and time was being bent, twisted, and eaten alive by the void in front of them. The predator wasn't just attacking, it was rewriting the universe itself. We need to find a way to stop it, Callan said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Prepare the fleet for Phase 2. We can't just hope to destroy it. We need to understand it, how it feeds, how it moves. The crew worked furiously as the fleet adjusted course, carefully positioning itself around the swirling energy. The ship's crew had no illusions anymore. This was not just a battle, they were facing a force that devoured galaxies. Their mission was to learn as much as they could, to understand it, and if they could, to stop it. But as Callan looked out at the heart of the predator's lair, he couldn't shake the feeling that this would be their final stand. Meanwhile, on the distant edge of the galaxy, the Galactic Union's leaders were watching the humans' progress with growing concern. Ambassador Lyris had always believed the humans would falter, that they were nothing more than a temporary distraction. But now, as the human fleet drew closer to the heart of the galaxy, Lyris realized how wrong she had been. Humanity was no longer just a nuisance. They were a threat not only to the Union but to the galaxy's very survival. I underestimated them, Lyris muttered to herself, standing at the head of the council room. The holographic display before her showed the movements of the human fleet as they closed in on the Predator's lair. If they succeed in stopping this force, she trailed off, the weight of the realization settling heavily on her shoulders. The Union had spent centuries building their power, suppressing species like humanity, ensuring that nothing could threaten their dominance. But if the humans unlocked the secrets of the Predator, if they learned to control the very force that was consuming the galaxy, it would change everything. We need to stop them, Lyra said, turning to her fellow council members. The Predator may destroy us all, but the humans cannot be allowed to gain control over it. Their rise must be contained before it's too late. General Varrock, standing at the far end of the room, nodded grimly. They've grown stronger than we ever imagined, and if they understand what's happening, they'll take control of the galaxy. We can't allow that. The Council's decision was clear. They would do whatever it took to stop humanity from uncovering the Predator's secrets. The stakes were higher than ever. Back on the human flagship, the fleet's movements were becoming increasingly erratic as the power of the Predator grew stronger. The ships began to shake, a low hum vibrating through the hull as if the very ship itself was being pulled into the abyss. We're losing control of the ship, the navigation officer shouted. The gravity wells, they're pulling us in. We can't escape. Hold your positions, Callan ordered. Stay focused. We're not going to be dragged under. But as the fleet fought to maintain its position, the vast darkness ahead seemed to grow, swallowing everything in its path. The Predator was not just consuming stars, it was consuming the very fabric of space itself. As the human fleet pressed forward, they knew the final confrontation was at hand. They could feel the tension in the air, the pull of the unknown force closing in around them. The Predator was not a traditional enemy, it was a living, breathing force that defied the galaxy's understanding of reality. But humanity had one thing their enemies didn't: an unyielding will to survive, to face the unknown no matter how dark or vast. The last battle had begun, and the fate of the galaxy rested in humanity's hands. Asterisk the catalyst of changes. The human fleet pushed deeper into the heart of the galaxy. Commander Callan couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that they were on the brink of something far larger than they had anticipated. The strange signal, the hum of energy emanating from the Predator's core, and the sudden synchronizing of the ship's systems with the unknown force, all of it pointed to a dangerous and unforeseen truth. This was no ordinary Predator, it was an ancient force tied to the very foundation of the galaxy, and humanity had unknowingly stepped into its path. In the dimly lit war room, Callan stood before the star map, a large hologram flickering before him. The deep, swirling void of space was punctuated by flashes of light from distant stars. But the area around the Predator's core was far darker than any part of the galaxy. It seemed as if the very light of stars was being absorbed into the darkness. Callan knew that they were nearing the heart of this darkness, and every second felt heavier than the last. We need to be ready, Callan said, his voice tense, but filled with determination. This is it. We're no longer just fighting to survive. We're fighting for the future of the galaxy, but more importantly, we're fighting for the truth. Lieutenant Arya stood by his side, her eyes filled with concern. Commander, the ship's systems, they're resonating with the Predator's energy. It's as though it's trying to connect with us, or it's us with it. The thought unsettled Callan. But there was no time to dwell on it. They were nearing the critical zone. The human fleet's progress had slowed due to the immense gravitational forces around the Predator's core. Yet, in their attempts to advance, they had begun to notice a change. Some of the crew members were reporting strange phenomena, feelings of déjà vu, vivid dreams, and a heightened sense of awareness. It was as if the very presence of the Predator was altering their perception of time and reality. The readings are off the charts, Commander, Arya continued. Whatever this is, it's not just a Predator, it's an ancient force, one that bends the very fabric of space-time. It might not just be consuming energy or life, it might be changing the universe itself. Callan's mind raced. What if the Predator isn't a creature at all? What if it's something more? A system designed to reset the galaxy, a force meant to rebalance everything? On the other side of the galaxy, the leaders of the Galactic Union were starting to grasp the enormity of what humanity had stumbled upon. Ambassador Lyris and General Varrock were at the forefront of the discussions, their faces grim as they watched the human fleet's movements. The humans have unlocked something, Lyris said, her voice low, filled with both dread and intrigue. This isn't just about a species trying to fight for survival. They've triggered something ancient, something much more dangerous than we ever imagined. General Varrock nodded solemnly. The Predator wasn't a random force, it's the galaxy's reset button. Designed to purge what the ancient races saw as corruption, we've kept it contained, hidden for millennia, but now, the humans have disturbed it and they're heading straight for it. They're not just fighting for Earth anymore, Lyris added. They're fighting to uncover the deepest secrets of the galaxy, ones that we've kept hidden for too long. And if they succeed, her words trailed off, but the meaning was clear. Humanity had unknowingly become a catalyst for a conflict that went beyond their survival. They were unlocking a truth that could change everything: the fate of the galaxy, its history, and its future. Back aboard the human flagship, the sense of foreboding was growing. As the fleet neared the Predator's core, Callan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The energy readings had intensified, pulsing with an almost malevolent force. Whatever the Predator was, it wasn't just some mindless creature, it was aware. It was waiting. Suddenly, the ship's comms officer looked up from her station, her face pale. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission. It's coming from the core. But it's not like anything we've received before." Callan stepped forward. "Play it." The screen flickered and a strange, garbled voice filled the room. It wasn't a language the humans could understand, but the transmission held a familiar pattern, one they had encountered before. The same energy that had been pulsing through the human ship's systems seemed to be emanating from the signal. The voice grew clearer. "You are the ones who have awakened it. You are the ones who will face the consequences." It was a warning, but it was more than that. It was a challenge. The Predator, or whatever it was, knew they were coming. And now, it was giving them the final test. Would humanity continue to press forward, or would they retreat in fear? Callan's eyes burned with determination. "We're not going anywhere." Set course for the heart of the core. As the fleet entered the heart of the Predator's domain, the energy around them intensified. The very fabric of space seemed to bend, warping as if reality itself was fighting to resist them. The Predator wasn't just consuming stars, it was consuming everything in its path, erasing space and time like an unstoppable force of nature. The ship's systems began to malfunction. Lights flickered, the engines sputtered, and strange pulses of energy danced through the hull. Crew members felt their minds racing, their bodies shaking with an unnerving energy. Something was changing within them, something deep. Something that had been triggered by their proximity to the Predator. This is no ordinary battle, Callan thought as he stood watching the chaos unfold. This is a battle for the soul of the galaxy. We've awoken something ancient and we have no idea what will happen next. As the human fleet advanced, the Predator's presence grew stronger. The galaxy's fate was at stake, and humanity had unknowingly become the key to the galaxy's survival or its total destruction. Callan stood at the front of the bridge, knowing that the final battle was coming, and it would change everything. Into the App's human fleet's engines hummed with a steady, ominous rhythm as they approached the heart of the Predator's domain. Commander Callan stood on the bridge, his eyes locked onto the dark, swirling mass ahead. The Predator, this force that had once been a whisper in the ancient corners of galactic history, was no longer an abstract threat. It was a living nightmare, a consuming force that existed outside the laws of the universe. And humanity had ventured directly into its path. "Status report," Callan commanded, his voice steady, though the weight of the situation pressed down on him. Lieutenant Arya, standing at her station, her hands working furiously over the controls, looked up. "We're being pulled in faster, Commander. The gravitational pull is unlike anything we've ever recorded. It's not just a physical force, it's bending time, Commander. The space around us is warping. We can't outrun it." Callan nodded grimly. They had known this would happen. The deeper they went, the more they realized they weren't just fighting a monster. The Predator wasn't some rogue alien force, it was a cosmic anomaly, a being, or perhaps a force, so ancient that it had been forgotten by the universe itself. But now, humanity had awakened it, and now they had no choice but to face it head on. The flagship's comms officer turned to Callan, a look of concern on her face. "Commander, we're receiving more transmissions. They're coming in from every fleet all across the galaxy. The Union, the Krasl, they've started to mobilize. They're gathering forces. But they don't know what they're really up against." Callan's gaze hardened. The galaxy's powers were scrambling, but they didn't yet understand what humanity had stumbled upon. They hadn't seen the devastation this Predator could cause firsthand. They hadn't felt its power, and soon, the galaxy would realize that humanity, though it had fought tooth and nail to survive, was now in a race against something far greater than themselves. The Predator wasn't just out to destroy Earth, it was out to erase everything, and humanity's fleet, despite its newfound strength, was only a small blip in the face of this cosmic force. "We have to make our move before the galaxy starts reacting," Callan said, his voice low and commanding. "Prepare the fleet to engage. We can't wait for help. We fight with what we have. And we fight smart. Our first priority is to find its core, its weak point, if there is one." Meanwhile, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, the Council of the Forgotten Races had already begun to take action. They had always known that the Predator wasn't just a creature. It was a weapon one designed to reset the universe itself, to purge it of corruption. For millennia, they had kept this knowledge hidden, guarding it from prying eyes. They had erased humanity from the galaxy's history to ensure that this truth would never see the light of day. But now the humans had stumbled upon it, and the galaxy's most powerful factions had no idea how to respond. The Council was pulling all its strings to ensure that humanity wouldn't be able to unlock the full potential of this ancient weapon. The humans have reached the core, one of the Council members said, their voice filled with ancient dread. They don't know what they're dealing with. If they awaken it completely, they will destroy everything. We must stop them before the Predator becomes part of their weaponry. Another voice responded, harsh and cold, the humans have already learned too much. We cannot allow them to control what has been hidden for eons. We will strike before they can make the next move. Back aboard the human flagship, Callan stood before the large star map, his face grim. The fleet was positioned as close to the Predator's core as they dared. The energy readings were off the charts, distorting the very fabric of reality around them. But despite the overwhelming odds, there was no turning back now. Humanity had come too far to retreat. We're not just fighting for Earth, Callan said quietly, looking out at the vast darkness beyond. We're fighting to show the galaxy that we have a place here. We've been underestimated, but now we're not just surviving, we're leading the charge. Arya looked up from her station. Commander, we've unlocked more of the Predators' energy signals. They seem to be coming from a central location at the heart of the core. But the signal isn't like anything we've seen before. It's not a weapon, it's something else. Something alive. Alive? Callan repeated, his brow furrowing. Are you saying this Predator is sentient? Arya hesitated. It's not just sentient, Commander. It's connected to the very fabric of space itself. It bends time, reality, and energy around it. It exists in a state of being that we cannot fully comprehend. It's feeding, evolving, and it's waiting. The ship trembled slightly, a low rumble coming from deep within its core. The crew exchanged tense looks as the energy reading shot through the roof. And Callan knew this was the moment. The Predator had sensed them. It had always known they were coming. Battle stations, Callan barked, his voice sharp and filled with urgency. We've reached the heart. The Predator is aware of us. Get ready. The crew moved quickly, preparing for the confrontation. Ahead, every ship in the fleet knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the galaxy's future. If they couldn't find a way to stop the Predator, then everything they had fought for would be for nothing. The galaxy, the stars, the very fabric of reality itself, everything would fall. As the flagship moved deeper into the heart of the Predator's domain, the hum of the ship grew louder, vibrating through the walls. Callan could feel the pressure building as the ship drew closer to the core, to the entity that had been devouring galaxies for eons. It was as if the very energy in the air was pushing against them, a wall of force stronger than anything they had ever encountered. And then, in an instant, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The Predator was there, and it was waiting. The final confrontation. The human fleet had entered the heart of the Predator's domain, and everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. The once vast expanse of space had now become a claustrophobic void, a place where even the stars seemed to die. The Predator wasn't just a physical entity. It was something far more incomprehensible. It didn't just devour stars or planets, it consumed the very essence of space itself, bending and breaking the laws of nature that governed the universe. Commander Callan stood at the front of the flagship, his eyes locked on the dark, swirling mass of energy ahead. The ship's hull vibrated under the strain of the immense gravitational pull. The fleet was trapped in a way they couldn't escape, and there was no turning back now. They had come too far, and failure was no longer an option. We've reached the center, Arya said, her voice tight with stress. The energy readings are off the charts. We're being drawn into its core. Commander, we're losing control. Callan didn't respond immediately. He knew that the core was more than just a physical space. It was a place where the fabric of reality itself was being unraveled. Every pulse of energy from the Predator was shaking the very foundation of the universe. If they didn't act quickly, they would be consumed, and with them, the last chance for the galaxy's survival. We can't let it consume us, Callan said, turning to his crew. It's not just about defeating the Predator anymore. It's about stopping the chain reaction it could trigger. If it continues feeding, it will devour everything, our galaxy, every system, every race. We can't let that happen. We've been preparing for this moment, Arya said, looking at the glowing console in front of her. But it's unlike anything we've ever faced. Even our weapons, they don't seem to affect it. This entity, it's beyond our comprehension. Then we'll have to think beyond weapons, Callan said, his voice firm. We've evolved too. Just like this Predator, we have to be smarter, faster. We need to understand it. As the flagship moved closer to the core, the crew felt an overwhelming pressure. as if the very air was thick with energy. The ship's systems began to malfunction under the strain of the Predator's presence. Everything around them seemed to be warping, shifting like a mirage in the heat. Callan's mind raced. The Predator was trying to absorb them, pull them into its vast, consuming darkness. But they had a secret weapon, one that came not from technology but from their own adaptability. We have one chance, Callan said. I want every ship in position. We'll synchronize the fleet's energy pulse and use the Predator's own energy against it. Arya blinked. We're going to use it against itself, Callan nodded. We've been pulled into its gravity, its energy, but what if it's not just a consuming force? What if it's trying to feed on more than just stars? What if it's feeding on the very fabric of space like a parasite? He turned to the helm, his expression steely. We've seen this before. The Predator doesn't just devour, it breaks down and reshapes. What if it's trying to destroy the core of the galaxy itself? And what if we can reverse that? As the human fleet lined up in formation, every ship synchronized its systems, aligning their energy pulses to create a counterforce against the Predator. It was risky, there were no guarantees, but Callan knew they didn't have time to hesitate. The Predator had been feeding for eons, its hunger infinite. Humanity had only one advantage, the ability to think, adapt, and evolve. It was the one thing that set them apart from every other species. Ready the pulse, Callan commanded. We fire in 5, 4, 3, the fleet's engines hummed in unison. As the energy pulses began to build, it was a gamble, a last-ditch effort to use the Predator's own feeding mechanism against it. The Predator might be too ancient to be stopped by conventional means, but it had never encountered humanity's resourcefulness. With a deafening surge, the energy pulse shot from the fleet's combined weapons, cutting through the thick atmosphere of the Predator's domain. The shockwave hit the Predator's core, causing the dark energy to ripple like water disturbed by a stone. For a moment, there was silence. And then, the Predator screamed. It wasn't a sound in the traditional sense. It wasn't an audible noise, it was a vibration. A force that echoed through space and reverberated in the very atoms of the ships. The human fleet felt it in their bones. The Predator had been wounded, it's reacting, Arya said, her voice shaking. I think we've done it. We've triggered a chain reaction. Callan's eyes widened. Get us out of here now, he ordered, but even as the words left his mouth, they knew it was already too late. The energy they had released had not just wounded the Predator. It had unleashed a violent cascade of energy. The Predator was now breaking apart, but in doing so, it was pulling everything down with it. The fleet attempted to reverse course, but the Predator's core was collapsing into itself, imploding into an immense singularity. The gravitational forces became unbearable. Callan looked out through the viewports at the swirling chaos, his mind racing as the very fabric of reality bent and twisted around them. Then, in a moment of terrifying clarity, Callan realized something. They hadn't just fought to survive. They had awakened something far larger than themselves, something that, once released, would never return to its dormant state. The Predator was no longer just a cosmic force, it was the catalyst for the destruction of the galaxy. The war they were fighting wasn't just a war for survival anymore. It was a war to stop the universe from collapsing. Brace for impact, Callan shouted as the ship's systems began to fail. The fleet's ships lurched, tumbling in the crushing gravity as the Predator's core collapsed into nothingness. The energy pulse had triggered the Predator's end, but the cost was more than they had ever imagined. As the galaxy shuddered under the Predator's collapse, the human fleet, battered and scarred, found itself suspended in the heart of the storm. Time seemed to stretch as the ships fought to stabilize themselves. But the real battle had just begun. Humanity had won this phase, but the true price was still unknown. The galaxy was no longer just a place of stars and systems, it was a battlefield, one where humanity had claimed its place as the galaxy's unexpected saviors. But what lay ahead was something far greater than just a war for survival. The true consequences of their actions would ripple across the universe for generations to come. And in the silence of space, Commander Callan could only wonder, had humanity sealed the galaxy's fate? Or had they just begun a war far greater than anyone could have imagined?